Chair lays out House Bill 3225 by Chairman King. Representative Anderson offers up the committee substitute to House Bill 1325. And the chair now calls on Chairman King to explain the bill and why he never had a room this full when I was on ag with him.
I just wasn't loved the way that you are and other members of this committee, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about House Bill 1325. Is a right to farm legislation that would allow Texas farmers the opportunity to cultivate a new heat and drought-resistant cash crop, that being hemp. Cultivation of hemp in Texas was jump-started by Congress's passage of the 2018 Farm Bill, which included a federal hemp act. The Farm Bill made hemp legal by decriminalizing the cultivation, processing, and possession of hemp planted with seeds certified to contain less than 0.3% THC, which I'm sure everybody in the room knows, but that's the active ingredient of the cannabis plant related to marijuana, which is still classified as a Schedule I controlled substance. Texas hemp is not the legalization of marijuana at any level. Hemp is a unique plant that it can be utilized from root to the tip and will open doors to new products, including automotive parts, hempcrete, fiber, clothing, construction material, and CBD oil. This legislation will allow Texas farmers to capitalize on the emerging hemp markets. To date, 42 states have legalized hemp production in some form. The Texas Department of Agriculture will oversee the registration of hemp farmers and the inspection and testing of hemp crops. The program will be financed with registration fees and no tax dollars. In fact, I think the fiscal note says that it would have a positive impact to the state of Texas at some level. The committee substitute, agreed to by the stakeholders that we're working with, will also require hemp testing to be performed by TDA, an institution of higher education, or an independent testing laboratory. The testing is important. Require the testing of crop samples both randomly and within 20 days of harvest. I believe that's something that you were concerned about, Chairman Springer. Require hemp products for consumption to have detailed information about ingredients and sources, and require a shipping manifest or certificate for raw, unprocessed hemp to verify that it does not contain over 0.3% THC. This manifest is DPS approved. It also requires manufacturing and production to be addressed via a memorandum of understanding between TDA and the Texas State Department of Health Services. The Texas Farm Bureau fully supports House Bill 1325 as amended. At this time, I'd be glad to answer any questions or turn it over to witnesses, and I understand there are a few.
You did get a few on this one. Members, any questions before we hear from the numerous witnesses that want to testify? Yes, Representative Fier.
Chairman, is there somebody that's going to testify that can give me an estimate on what the cost per acre is if they grow hemp versus what they're growing now?
I bet there will be.
Okay, great. I'll hold on my question.
All right.
If there's not, we'll get you an answer. Any experts you want.
Representative Anderson.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, appreciate you being here today. Interesting topic. You made a statement early on that you anticipated everybody in this room would understand about .03. I wonder what your basis for that was.
Just lots of comments over the years, Chairman Anderson.
Thank you.
And you did, and while Representative Anderson was on the committee in the interim, you did do substantial amount of input and interim studies on this issue. Yeah,
we did. We actually, as you know, you were on the committee part of that time. We worked on this 3 sessions and in a very deliberate process on what was then a pilot program before the USDA decriminalized it in Washington, D.C. And then last session, we passed a pilot program bill out of this committee. It didn't get to the floor, but we passed it out of here. And then over the interim, we obviously had more interim studies, which I'm sure you've looked at and read when you had trouble going to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. All good stuff. All right. Thank you, Chairman King. We will reserve your right to close. Absolutely. Would never dream of anything else. Let's see here. Chair calls up James Dickey. All right. We will see if he comes. Chair calls Charles Beal, and I apologize if Charles, if I've missed that, if it's Bell instead of Beal, but and if you will, I think it's the first time I've seen you here, Charles, so if you'll state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Charles Bell, Senior Chemist at Analab Corporation in Kilgore, Texas, and I'm testifying on behalf of Analab Corporation and myself in support of House Bill 1325 by King. Thank you, Chairman Springer and the committee members, for allowing me to testify today. Analab is a full-service environmental lab with a 50-year-plus history in the piney woods of East Texas. Analab is a nationally recognized company holding multiple certificates and also been awarded a wide range of honors and honors from sources such as the Better Business Bureau, the Texas Association of Businesses, the American Council of Independent Laboratories, and many individual Chamber of Commerces. We are a proud provider of analytical services to individuals, businesses, municipalities, and governments ranging from our local communities within the state of Texas and stretching from coast to coast of our nation. These analytical services are used by our clients for state and federal regulated environmental reporting, as well as internal business and personal needs. Whether it's one sample or a years-long relationship, Analab is testing the limits of science and service one client at a time. Analab and I support House Bill 1325 by King as it relates to three areas that we believe are important to the citizens of Texas and those that travel here to visit family or vacation within our borders. These are: 1, consumer safety; 2, provide business opportunities for the citizens of Texas; and 3, provide those in Texas access to CBD products and a variety of other products derived from hemp. Specifically, House Bill 1325 by King gives direction to: 1, ensuring product availability are safe for the intended purpose. That is to say, they have appropriate testing by an accredited third-party laboratory that is relevant, defensible, and meets state and/or federal regulations. Analab is currently working to be the go-to laboratory within the state for third-party analytical testing of hemp and hemp products. Number 2, the 2018 U.S. Farm Bill provides Texans a legal means to commercialize industrial hemp. Thus, the bill provides a regulatory framework to grow, harvest, produce commercial products, and market products from hemp. Additionally, we expect job creation to boost rural economies as a result of a clear direction from the legislature, from the field to the store shelf for hemp products. And third, the legal availability of CBD and other hemp-derived products will provide the consumer renewable choices in products that are currently unavailable. Additionally, spur research and development of new products and processes for hemp. We believe House Bill 1325 by King addresses these areas and provides a framework for further regulation to meet the needs of Texas and Texans to cultivate, manipulate, and commercialize hemp-derived products. Furthermore, the bill addresses testing to ensure products are safe for the citizens and visitors of Texas. In closing, as I prepared for our testimony, I ran across an 81-year-old article from the February 1938 issue of Popular Mechanics titled "New Billion-Dollar Crop," labeling hemp the new cash crop. I found it interesting that many of the same concerns, issues, and potential uses are being discussed today. At the end of the article, the following is written: if regulations can be drawn up to protect the public without preventing the legitimate cultivation of hemp, the new crop can add immeasurably to the American agriculture and industry. Well, here we are some 81 years later having this very discussion. Thank you, Chairman Springer and committee members, for allowing me to testify today. If Analab or I can be of further assistance to this committee or the larger House, please contact us and we'd be happy to help.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Dr. Beal, for being here and testifying today. I wonder if you could tell us, and Analab may or may not be in that wheelhouse, but what are the testing procedures from, say, planting to processing? Are there several?
Yes, as it's being done in other states, in-field testing or testing where you collect samples from the field, and then as it's further processed, if it's turned into oils or there's other terms as butter and other types of products, there'd be testing as it's modified for impurities that might be introduced or materials that could be concentrated beyond what's legally acceptable. So there's many points to be tested, if you will, throughout the processing and marketing of the products.
Would you say it's several, 3 to 4?
At least 2 pre-harvest and then post processing and so forth. At least 2, but possibly more, as it's taken to different products and packaged differently and so forth. I can envision an oil being then infused into some other type of product, an edible or whatever, that then would need to be tested again to make sure that it still meets the letter of the law for content.
And you know of any testing requirements as far as transportation? Say if DPS happens to
Right,
stop
that's one of our concerns, that since we would be potentially collecting samples in the field and transporting those, then what happens if that sample, that material is actually in excess of what's legally permitted? Unknowing to us, we'd be transporting and potentially breaking law because of that. So we wanted some protections in for our people that would handle the material post or pre-analysis.
Okay, and if it was, say, even in the field testing, if it tested over at 0.03, what would be done with that product at that point?
I'm not absolutely sure. I think the bill addresses how it could be either reprocessed or retested to make it where it's acceptable, but I'm not sure of the details of that. I can check into that and get back with you, please.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Dr. Beller, if this isn't in your area, although you did reference the 2018 Farm Bill in talking about the marketing of products, are there any rules or regulations on how hemp is marketed as far as, logos, things you can put on it, anything from that standards?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
One of the things that I have asked,
because I think that's, and the reason I asked that, I think that's part of the, misunderstanding and confusion when we talk about industrial hemp versus marijuana. Because you see products, and I had one dropped off a couple weeks ago. It was a lotion, but you've got the leaf on there, and the understanding is, or the question is are they trying to sensationalize it that it's something other than what it really isn't, because there is no THC in it, or 0.3 tops.
right?
So.
And I agree, labeling is probably an issue and stuff. One of the other issues is organic. We throw that term around, and we use that term for some of our products, commercial products already, potatoes, carrots, whatever, organically grown. So what does that apply to in this case? Especially something that's heavily processed in oil, for example, that maybe use solvents and things like that, synthetic solvents and so forth. Is that still truly organic, or is that not? And that's, I don't offer a suggestion for how to call that, but it's something I think needs to be addressed.
Okay.
So labeling is important.
All right, thank you. Representative Raymond, did you have a question?
Chairman, yes. Maybe I'm misunderstanding this bill. I thought the main focus, and I missed. Maybe I didn't miss all of the presentation, but I thought the main focus on this was just try to decide whether we would allow people to grow it.
That's correct.
And so the marketing issues you get into, even if we didn't pass this bill, which I support, let me be clear. Do not start throwing stuff at me. I support it. But even if it didn't pass because others of my colleagues, let's say, did not support it, it would not affect what you're talking about, whether or not this bill passed, right?
Well, the question is
I just don't
no,
want
there is issues of whether you put that in a bill like this, or there are other members that are talking about when it gets to the consumer level, do they handle that? And so,
okay, so you're
that potentially it doesn't here, but that's one of those issues, though. I think we want to understand as
yeah,
a
and I totally get that. It's just I wanted to be clear what this bill was about. If this bill is just about, are we going to let Texans grow it in Texas, which I believe we should. If we want to get into the marketing issue, that's probably a whole different.
It may be BNI. It may be a whole other committee, I would think.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure. Other thing, parliamentary inquiry.
But I
Mr.
may
Chairman.
not have I may not have an opportunity to talk to an expert in the field enough to understand
fair enough.
where the U.S. Farm Bill and those, and obviously Dr. Bell is much more familiar with it than myself.
Fair enough. Question, Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I believe we have, how many witnesses? About 25 on this?
Approximately.
And are any of them registered against?
I did not see at this time.
I believe that they're all in favor,
That is correct.
so that everyone who's...
Or neutral. There's a few neutrals in there.
Okay.
And maybe resource witnesses, but I did see some neutrals.
I just,
Okay.
thank you.
Let me make a quick announcement before we, if you don't mind standing there,
Sure,
Dr.
I'm
Bell.
fine.
I appreciate that. I have been informed that we have a problem with the fire marshal and that we have too many people in this room standing. We do have an overflow room. If you are with a group, please leave one representative. We will give you time to get in here if we call you to come on that. If you're here to testify on 3806, it will be after we hear the hemp bills. And so if you're here waiting on that, I would highly encourage you to be respectful of the fire marshal in the rooms and wait in E2014, and you can be able to hear it and see it in there as well. So if you'd be helpful on that, it'll keep us out of trouble with the fire marshal. I'd hate to have him tell us we just have to have everybody standing leave and not be somewhat respectful.
Chairman, I'll be in the overflow.
Okay, and we'll make sure we send Representative Freeman over to the overflow room. All right. Good. And I appreciate it. Thank you guys very much for your understanding on that. No, okay. No, I apologize. No, I missed first time too. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. All right. Thank you, Dr. Bell. No further questions. Oh, Representative Mason, I apologize.
That's all right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Mason.
That was an important announcement, so I didn't mind waiting. Well, this bill is different from the other hemp bills in that it does say regulation, not only the regulation of hemp, but it says and products made from hemp. So that's what's important about what you're saying about the lab testing. And I read an article recently that talked about CBD and oils and so on is different from CBD in edibles. So how would you go about regulating or testing the safety of products if the CBD is put in edibles?
Well, okay, so let me give you a little bit more background on myself. I've been an analytical chemist for over 30 years. And so the analytical techniques that are used to analyze and quantitate are pretty much the same no matter what form the material is in prior to analysis. In other words, an oil or an edible, raw, even leaves and so forth, it would be prepped in such a manner as to get it in a form that can be analyzed. And so those are just what I'd call processes or procedures that would be worked out on the front end of the analysis. But there's really there's nothing intrinsically different in how one would analyze it per se by it being an oil or whether it's an edible in a cookie or
topical versus ingested is not different.
And it's the analysis would be probably done on a weight basis. On a weight percent basis, that's usually the way that the legislation is written, on a 0.3% by weight, and so that would be no matter if it's an oil or an edible or whatever, a lotion, a cream, a shampoo, whatever it is, even in dog food, whatever it might be. So it'd be on a weight basis. So it's just sample prep that's the difference, and everything else after that, after it's prepped, it would be analyzed with the same techniques. And this is not new. They're doing this already in many other states. And so we're as a company, we're concerned about transporting material that might be above the limit, and in two, making sure that the products are safe, that what the stated levels of the components, trace impurities, solvents, pesticides, heavy metals, whatever, are safe for the consumer. Our citizens and so forth that are purchasing these and using these within our borders or elsewhere if they take it out. And then allow interstate commerce to be able to test materials from other states. We're already seeing stuff there's a place within walking distance of here that you can buy the products today. And to the best of my knowledge, there's no testing done on those. So, are our citizens at risk?
So you feel like this would be an improvement over the current status where we don't have any testing?
Right. And this is paramount in my mind that we get something passed so that we can start looking at making rules and regulations so that we can test these things and make sure they're safe.
Yeah,
we don't want people getting sick or heaven forbid, pass away because they ingested something that wasn't healthy or wasn't good for them. So.
Yeah, we see a lot of signs around town at different store windows about CBD.
Right.
But I also saw, like I said, I saw an article recently about the difference if it's made into an edible. So I just wanted you to be able to address that.
Right, but from a testing standpoint, it doesn't. It's a sample, just like anything else that we've dealt with. We've done close to almost 2 million samples in the time frame that Analab has been in business. So
Would there be a difference, though, in how concentrated it is for an oil on your skin versus how concentrated it is in an edible?
the oil itself might be the CBD oil, but the THC content is capped at 0.3%. So that's my understanding of how the laws would be written and what the federal laws state and what we're targeting here. It's 0.3 for THC, which is the active ingredient or the hallucinogenic material.
And that's what you would test for?
That's one of them. And that's probably the primary one to be within the scope of hemp.
And what other things would be important to test for as for safety?
Heavy metals. A lot of fields might be amended with sludges from waste treatment facilities, and plants and things like that pick up heavy metals, so that'd be a concern. If there's any pesticides that are used for either insects or weeds, those could end up in the product.
They get absorbed by the plant?
Or if it's sprayed onto the plant, just like your own, farm, your own garden, you might use Sevin dust or whatever, so you need to test for that. Solvents, if you make it into an oil, you have to extract that, and usually you use chemicals to do that, to extract that. So we have to make sure that's all been removed or below levels. Some of those are toxic, so you don't want to be ingesting those or putting those under your skin because they're going to be absorbed into the skin. So there's health issues regarding those. There's also fungicides and other things that are present, that could be present, so those need to be tested for. So there's a lot of, since it can be consumed and it will be used on skin or a number of different ways, there's a number of different tests that would need to be applied to make sure it's safe. You don't want people getting sick or ill because of it.
That's true. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Representative Beckley.
So we're talking about this, I'm just talking about this bill and that we have in front of us. Does it differentiate between products that we're consuming versus products that, like a brick? Obviously a brick doesn't need to be, if we're going to make a brick out of it, we don't need to maybe test for all the fungicides and pesticides. And are we setting up standards for consumables, topicals, and then maybe, I think, brickwork and different things that we can use? Is that in this bill, or is that other things that have to be addressed? That we would have to always...
No, I think that'll be other ones that are being addressed, and I think there are other bills that are already looking at this, and I think this one is, as Chairman King says, is focused on the growth and how you do the inspections to make sure it's not beyond 0.3, and we go forward from there.
Okay,
Yeah, it's
thank you.
it's just basically stated testing. So.
Yeah, I'm just...
But because of some of the others, it does lead into some of those other questions. So, all right, I
I just
appreciate
wanted
your...
clarity. Thank you.
No problem.
All right. Thank you, Saul.
Thank you, Dr. Bell.
Thank you.
Okay, and before I call the next witness, who is an absolute expert and would never do this, and I apologize not to call anybody out, but if you do have prepared statements you're planning to hand us as handouts, please show the committee respect. We will read those, but we would rather hear from you directly of what your thoughts are and summarize those rather than reading your statements to us. So with that, the chair calls, I don't know if I know this guy, Rick Hardcastle, former chairman of Ag and Livestock and a constituent of House District 68. Welcome, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, committee members, for the record, my name is Rick Hardcastle. I am a registered lobbyist, but I am here today testifying for myself and for House Bill 1325. Committee, the state of Texas is the #1 producer of many agriculture products. You can just go down the list where we're #1. And if they can be grown in the South, we're usually #1. And with the production of hemp and hemp products now included in the U.S. Farm Bill, as the chairman said, this bill would be a great start toward keeping Texas up with new products in all the fields of production agriculture. In this state, we proudly have the agencies, the university research, the Foundation, Texas Foundation Seed Service, Texas Department of Agriculture, and other entities to write rules and clarify, certify seeds and make sure that only hemp is grown and produced. We have all that stuff in place. As a state, we have done this on several changes in federal law, including highway regs, DOT regulations on trucks. We got to write all the regs. They just told us what our boundaries were. Pesticide regulation and many more that as a state we write the rules. We pass a law to where these agencies can write the rules or further what we put down on paper. And we've been doing this as long as I can remember, or as long as I've been alive, and I've been alive a long time. House Bill 1325 would be a great start for Texas to move forward in this process, and I think it's the proper time, and this bill is a great start, and we're already behind 42 other states, as you heard the chairman say, because 42 other states have made this legal and proper and gone forward with it. Now, my only other deal today, I brought the stick for an example. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2001 in this building and have had relapse this past winter, have had several relapses over the past 15 years. But some of you noticed this session I've been using this stick to walk on. Well, I started on pure hemp oil, not CBD, but pure hemp oil 3 weeks ago. I've been 1 week without the stick. I've been 2 weeks nearly completely through with my shaking, and have been spending the last week stopping some of my other drugs that I was taking for the shaking. So I highly recommend this bill. And then on a side note, Mr. Chairman, I hate to drop you into grease, but on a side note, you and I both live 35 miles from Oklahoma.
Yes, sir.
Oklahoma's already doing this. Texas never wants to be second to the state of Oklahoma in production agriculture. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll end my testimony, and I'll gladly stand for questions, or I will gladly sit down and shut up.
Committee, is there any questions? Well, it's an honor to have you in front of me, Rick. You've been a great mentor and somebody who has shared an awful lot of wisdom with me, and I appreciate it very much.
You're too kind.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
I think Representative Anderson, you've served under Chairman King, Hardcastle, and myself.
Right.
We'll have to get you some help later. Okay, the chair calls Jeff Williams. Please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill. Although Richard Raymond may gave everybody's position away, so.
My name is Jeff Williams. I represent Clayton Williams Farms and Ranches. I'm also a board director on the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, and this is not a April Fool's joke, but I was elected to be president and chair of the U.S. Hemp Farmers Alliance. Can't even grow it yet, but in anticipation, and we are in favor of House Bill 1325. We have a large irrigated farm in West Texas. I know many farmers who have struggled, throughout the years on and off. We primarily raise alfalfa and corn and cattle. And I agree, it's already been in 42 states legalized. It's on most shelves in most stores. There's several people that are going to be able to answer. So there's a processor, grower, and another gentleman that is based out of Texas, is one of the largest CBD sellers in the nation. With that, I'll take any questions.
Representative Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you, Jeff,
Yes,
back.
sir.
And I know you've been working on this for a number of years. I wonder if you might mention some of your travels overseas and the like, researching this product.
We've gone, we went to Holland to Hemp Flax, they've been growing and processing it for 20 years, and got down and studied it with them. I've been to Kentucky multiple times with the Hemp Roundtable. I know it's a viable crop for Texas, and I am also here as a farmer's rights. I believe we should have the opportunity to be able to grow it. It's been interesting because I was part of the interim study that Chairman King was in charge of, and you go to these people and they hold a lot of information very tight-vested. There's a gentleman, Jeff Lake, that will be able to talk more intelligently about the actual growing and the process, and from growing to processing. As I've not been able to do it, I've gotten bits and pieces, but I can't really speak to the whole process.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your interest and your study of this particular product.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? All right.
Thank you,
Jeff.
Chairman.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Chair calls Alexander Andros. And I apologize if I mispronounced. He's outside and be coming back. Okay, he's left. Okay. Chair calls David Cree Crawford.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. And I apologize if I mispronounced anything.
Oh, no, not at all.
Name, who you represent, and
Yes.
position on the bill.
First time, and I really appreciate this. A great honor. I am here in support of Representative King's HB 1325. I represent myself as well as a organization called Ionization Labs that I'm the president and COO and co-founder. Ionization Labs, first of all, my background is I've got about 2 decades as a science and technology professional. I'm a cannabis and hemp, marijuana and hemp expert in the industry, and I'm a concerned citizen, a business leader, and proud citizen of the state of Texas. My background working with a number of states that have already legalized marijuana and hemp gives me a very unique position to be here. About 6 years ago, I realized with my colleagues that there is a tremendous need to create a testing solution that was accurate, simple to use, and cost effective. And the reason being is we've experienced in other states a very, very big bottleneck once legalization occurs. Many of the labs, and by the way, doctor, well, the doctor might have left already, but what the doctor brings up is absolutely solid testimony. Testing is one of the most important parts of this industry from a health and safety standpoint, from a business best of breed quality control, and also for law enforcement and identifying whether it is cannabis, marijuana or hemp with that 3%. So there's got to be a tool out there that's going to be quick, cost-effective, and deployable. We have that solution. We've developed that solution. You have materials in your hands that you're welcome to look at your leisure. What we have done is taken a lab-grade HPLC, which is called high-performance liquid chromatography, and the doctor was explaining what that is. You have to take a sample, whether it's oils or a flour, and you have to extract the cannabinoids out of it into a liquid. That liquid is then injected into an analytical device, and that analytical device separates the cannabinoids out into their percentages within that test sample. We've taken a device just like that and created a device where it's simplified so the average user could use it, so the average farmer could have one of these in-house and test throughout the cultivation process. An extractor can utilize this technology service to identify what they have in-house. The other thing is that the labs that are to be certified going down this road can also utilize this device, and they're networked. So these devices are all, the ability to have consistent networked consistency is one of the biggest challenges that people have had in other states. And we have an opportunity here in the great state of Texas to start from
Representative
scratch.
Anderson.
So,
Yes, Mr.
thank you.
Crawford, appreciate
Yes,
it. Just to interrupt just a
No,
second.
please, and thank you.
Very interested in that. So that's kind of a handheld type test?
No, no, sir. Handheld devices do not offer the quality control and the analytical power that you need. This is a device that it's about the size of a computer. We can mobilize it. We actually submitted an RFI to the DEA to be a standardized unit for them to test for hemp and marijuana around the country.
Well,
so, yes, sir.
And the thought I had in mind there for testing, I'm sure a lot of it's tied to the DNA of the seeds, but so to speak. But the if you were testing say you had 200 acres,
Yeah.
you might want to test this side here that might have a little more access to
Quadrants.
water or what have you, or quadrants.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And then test the field that way. Would this technology lend itself to that?
Oh, absolutely, sir. There's a number of standardized testing procedures in agriculture. This would follow that same protocol in order to get an average. And again, it's yes, sir. You
I
could
think
do that.
that'd be real helpful.
Yes, sir.
No, and I think in anytime, agriculture has seen new opportunities, when something comes on, the technology rapidly comes up to address those issues and needs that they need to do. All right, anything else?
No, it's just
All
been a
right.
great honor, and we're
Members,
I'm here
any
to-
other questions?
Thank you.
No. Thank you very
All
much.
right. Thank you. Chair calls Jeff Lake.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Jeff Lake, and I am the President, General Counsel, and founders of Elemental Processing. I'm here speaking on behalf of myself and my company, Elemental Processing. We are a hemp processing company. We are based out of Lexington, Kentucky. We began there in 2017. In 2017, we raised 200 acres of hemp in Kentucky. Last year, we raised 1,100 acres in Kentucky and Tennessee. We're licensed by the state of Kentucky, Tennessee, and Oregon. And recently, we have acquired the old ACS coffee processing plant in Houston, Texas.
And Jeff, again, I hate to interrupt, but your position on the bill.
For the bill.
Thank you.
I'm here
Please
speaking
continue.
in favor of House Bill 1325.
There you go.
So I wanted to touch on a couple things and maybe answer a couple questions that have already been arisen from the point of view as an actual processor that works with hemp every day and has for the last couple years, to talk a little bit about how this bill affects not only the type of hemp that is used for CBD, but there are actually 3 different types of varieties of hemp that are generally grown. One is for grain, and that is for the seeds, which are pressed into oil, which makes hemp oil, and also the husk of the seed, which is very high in protein. The second is for the fiber, and that is the type of hemp that you will see that's used for clothing, rope, textiles, building materials, that sort of thing. And the third one is for the flower. And that is where the cannabinoids are found, and that is where CBD and other cannabinoids come from. This bill encompasses all 3 types of hemp. It's not just limited to one particular variety, but it covers the entire spectrum of hemp that can and should be grown here in Texas. To put that in perspective, since the Farm Bill passed in Congress last year and 42 states have come on board, the amount of hemp cultivation in the country is going up by literally thousands of % per year. There were probably less than 10,000 acres of hemp grown in the entire United States in 2015, which was the start of that resurgence of hemp after the 2014 Farm Bill. This year, it is expected that there could be upwards of millions of acres grown and the possibility of hundreds of millions of pounds of hemp grown throughout the country. As you all know, Texas is perfectly suited as far as the agronomy and geographic and geological conditions here are very well suited for hemp. There are very many expert farmers here. Mr. Williams, who just spoke, is one of them. And there's no reason why hemp should not be able to be produced here for grain, fiber, and for flour. But as you know, any farmer will tell you that there is no reason to grow a crop unless you can bring it to market. And the way that hemp goes to market, it needs to be processed. It's not something like a vegetable where you can grow it and you can take it straight to the grocery store. In order to get it to market, it has to be processed. And in order to be processed, you need to have a processor. And so the reason that 1325 is so important is because it not only encompasses what is important as far as growing, but it also encompasses the rules for the processors to work in conjunction with the farmers to make sure that there is public safety from the beginning of the germination of that seed all the way through the end product that goes to the consumer, whether it be a textile or whether it be a CBD product. The bill is very well written in that regard, and so I wanted to touch on that briefly. 0.3% THC essentially has no psychotropic effect at all. Rather, what it does is it makes it at such a level that it is not dangerous from an illicit drug point of view, and it allows you to concentrate on the other benefits of the hemp plant. In order to process hemp, there are several ways to do it. There are solvents involved. You've heard testimony about that. But you can also do it by using CO2. CO2 is a naturally occurring product. It is something that dissipates during processing, and it can keep that hemp as a natural product, and it's a very good processing method. The reason I want to talk about CO2 processing a little bit more is because, as I mentioned, the ACS coffee plant in Houston was shut down last May. When that happened, there were over 700 jobs lost. We have now acquired that property and its extraction system. Turns out that extracting caffeine from coffee is almost the same process as extracting cannabinoids, particularly CBD, from hemp. So instead of that building sitting there becoming blighted and eventually being demolished, we came in with the intent of leaving that building intact to repurpose it as a hemp processing facility. And the reason is because that is the largest CO2 extraction system in the world. And if this bill passes and the rules are followed, we will be coming to Texas with the largest CO2 processing hemp facility in the world, with the capability of processing upwards of 150 million pounds a year. We are very excited to be in Texas and to be able to do that. We will be able to process all of the hemp that could be grown in Texas with an economic impact in the billions of dollars per year, and that doesn't even consider the hundreds of jobs that we will be able to create right here in Texas, in Houston. So from that point of view, you need to look at it not only as a great right to farming bill, but also a great bill as far as boosting the economy of Texas as a whole, and by keeping the citizens of Texas and anywhere else that are cultivating and processing Texas hemp safe. We have an accredited lab in Lexington, Kentucky, in our facility there. We have 42,000 square feet, and we can process about 2 million pounds of hemp a year. That pales in comparison to what's going to be necessary throughout the United States and what can be done right here in Texas. So for those reasons, I highly support Bill 1325. I will field any questions you like, but if you will indulge me for a moment, I want to hit on a couple of the questions that were already asked. One member of Fierro was, what is the cost of farming? And there are different methods of farming hemp. If you're farming hemp for flower, you want to have a female plant. A female plant is the only plant that flowers. That's where the cannabinoids are found. So if you want to, and you want to have a more potent and a more viable and valuable crop, you're going to want to use feminized seeds, or you're going to want to take clippings or clones off of feminized plants. Right now, the market for one feminized quality hemp seed is about $1. And to promulgate that seed and then plant it as a transplant or as a clone is typically another $2 to $3. The cycle for hemp, it goes in should go in about the beginning of June, maybe a little bit earlier here because we're further south than other parts of the country, and it's harvested typically in October. So it's a one and done. There are some people that will maybe advocate for greenhouse growing, but you really can't do the scale that's going to be necessary to feed the appetite of the Americans that want to use it for the 3 different reasons we talked about. And there are going to be far more farmers that are going to be able to farm outside very well, as opposed to constructing greenhouses or trying to grow indoors. So from that point of view, it takes about 2,500 seeds per acre. So you're talking about a cost of about $7,500 just in genetics if you're going to be growing feminized seeds. So that's expensive. Irrigation, hemp is actually a very good plant when it comes to water. It takes a little bit more in the first couple weeks because you need to set that root. It's a tap root, so it will find water. Once the plant is set, it really doesn't take nearly as much water as you would think. It can last for weeks without water. And so if you can either irrigate by pivot, you can do it by drip, or there are a lot of places where you just rely on Mother Nature and the rain. The next most expensive thing when it comes to farming is the harvest. And right now, there are many mechanized harvest technology that's being developed. It's a huge hot topic with companies like John Deere and other manufacturers. Texas is suited because of the weather here, that you also can dry largely in the field. In Kentucky, where our factory is and a lot of our hemp was grown, you don't have that luxury because the humidity is so high and the rain is so frequent. You cannot leave hemp to dry in rows, right? You can't just do windrows for drying. In a lot of the areas in Texas, you absolutely can, and that cuts down on that cost significantly. So if you're looking at doing a high CBD crop, you're going to be looking at a cost of a farmer to do it in that method in rows, as a row farm, of, honestly, $5,000 to $10,000 an acre. However, you will be able to, the farmers that do that are typically making a $5,000 to $10,000 an acre profit because of the value of the hemp and the as a dried commodity. If you want to use common farming, just using common seed, which is male and female seeds, and you want to broadcast, you're going to have a lot lower yield. You're going to have a lot less potency in your hemp, which is fine if you have the acreage to do it. Texas is one of those states where in Kentucky, an average hemp farm might be 5 acres. 50 acres is a big one. 200 acres is really big. Here, you can do 1,000 acres, no problem. Because of that, you can use common seed and you can broadcast your seed as opposed to planting in rows. So the costs go down significantly. The trouble, though, is if you're going to have a lower quality hemp, meaning the CBD potency is lower, that there are stems and stalks, and there are a lot of seeds, it's more difficult to process because particularly if you're running it through CO2 or a solvent. We don't use solvents, but ethanol is a popular extraction method. You don't have the efficiencies with the less quality material. So that's another reason why we're so excited about the facility in Houston, because we can take a 2 to 3% material that most other processors in the country wouldn't touch because they're not efficient enough in their methods to extract the CBD from it. But with a large CO2 facility like that, you can. So that's another reason why this bill is so important to Texas. So that kind of those are kind of the farming costs.
Mr. Chairman, my question was specifically along the lines of how do you compare it to the crops that people are farming now or growing now? What's the difference between cotton, let's say? How much is that a profit per acre versus the hemp profit per acre?
I'm not familiar with cotton as much as I am with corn and beans.
Okay, corn, fine.
Okay, so for corn, you would expect about $400 an acre profit on a good year. Unfortunately, this year was a bad year because it rained every day in October, so there was a lot of farmers that had a hard time with corn. But you would expect about $350 to $400 an acre as your net profit for corn. For soybeans, it's going to be less. It could be $150 to $200 an acre. For hemp, we pay our hemp farmers We supply their genetics for them because we have a breeding program that saves them the large upfront cost, and we typically pay between $3,000 and $5,000 an acre plus a bonus based upon yield. You would expect about 1,000 pounds of dried flower per acre and upwards of 2,000 pounds an acre. So the hemp farmers that we employ, because we do our own, but we also do a lot of contract farming, those farmers are expecting at least $5,000 an acre in profit.
So I'm assuming that the profit comes down. It rolls down. The people working in the fields and the farm working on the farms get probably paid more than if the corn.
Yeah, well, our company, we actually, our minimum wage that we pay anyone starts at $15 an hour plus benefits. That's just one of the things that we do.
Is retirement included? Because I may have to apply.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you a card on the way out. So yes, there are benefits that trickle all the way down. Now, there are also lots of high-paying jobs. You've heard from PhDs. We employ PhD scientists, engineers, mechanical engineers. We have people that are formulating products. We are a bulk ingredient supplier. All we do is make CBD. But there are all of the formulation people. There's the distribution. Of course, there's retail, which is what the normal consumer would see. So the economic impact is absolutely enormous, and it is going up. Although I will tell you that because the demand has inspired a lot more production, we fully expect that the price of hemp as a commodity will level out like any other commodity. It will come down significantly. The cost of production is going to go down as more people become involved and there are more companies and technology is improved. So we think that the market is absolutely going to stabilize, but as of now, we are here and we're growing exponentially. It is that's true because not only is it CBD, for example, legal in America, it's also legal internationally.
Jeff, you said in 2015 there was about 10,000 acres, and what would you estimate the North American crop was last year? I may have missed that when you said.
We don't have all the statistics back from all the departments of agriculture yet, but I know, for example, just in Kentucky, it went from about 3,000 acres in 2017 to about 12,000 acres in 2018, and there were over 52,000 acres approved for 2019. So how much was actually harvested? We don't have those numbers yet because the harvest just occurred in October and November. But our research is telling us that last year there were probably, I would guess, we went through about 2 million pounds. There's probably 50 million pounds max in the country, maybe half of that. And we expect that there'll be at least 100 million pounds this year, more likely closer to 200 million pounds grown in North America this year. And that's just domestically, because remember, you cannot import hemp from another country. All needs to be grown here. So it is growing by leaps and bounds.
You can't bring it in to do the processing, but you can bring the products in.
Not necessarily. There are rules. You can bring in seeds if they are certified.
But if I see hemp lotion, hemp shirts, and those things that are made in Canada. Correct.
But there's a difference between hemp and CBD. For example, if it's a hemp fiber, that you absolutely can bring in.
Right.
But that's very different than a CBD product, for example.
Right.
And it's different than a viable plant or a viable seed. And those are all controlled by the DEA still. Any imports of any viable material, whether it be a start or a seed, needs to go through the Department of Agriculture to the state that it comes into. It would be the same in Texas. I just can't go out and buy seeds from anyone, domestically or internationally. And if a seed is not certified, and by the way, there is no federal certification for hemp seeds in North America yet, and the reason for that is because it takes 5 years to certify a seed. And the Farm Bill first passed in 2014. The first crops went out in 2015. So by definition, we haven't hit that 5-year mark. This bill addresses that, and it defines certification as approved by the Texas Department of Agriculture. And the way that that's typically done is whoever is the geneticist for those seeds has to be licensed. in whatever state they're in. They have to show the history of the plant from which those seeds are derived to show that it is actually a hemp plant with less than 0.3%. You have to have a certificate of analysis throughout the cycle of the seeds, and that needs to be by an accredited laboratory, an ISO lab or a state lab.
Representative Anderson.
Yes, Jeff, very much appreciate your expertise here. I wonder, as you're saying that with the cycle there, is there any advantages to hemp as far as replenishing the soil, nitrate accumulators, or helping legumes, or is there any advantage that way?
Yes, actually, hemp is a very good rotational crop. It's often followed corn. Hemp is good at drawing up a lot of salt and other less desirable minerals in the soil. So I know in states like Kentucky and Tennessee, it's often used as a rotational crop, absolutely.
And it was interesting this morning, we were kind of joking in my office there, wherein if the hemp market develops as we anticipate, and if the price of oil starts to deteriorate,
right.
We can actually use sweet crude to irrigate the
Right.
hemp crop, and it would also act as a herbicide and insecticide.
If you approve that, then I'm sure there will be people who consider it.
And I think to Representative Fierro's question and comments, and one of those is, I've got 22 counties, and probably well over half are in cotton. One of my counties would be 640,000 acres, and so versus 12,000 that was grown in Kentucky. I think that and it's one of my concerns that when we hear $5,000 an acre profit, everybody's going to think 640,000 acres. Right. If I took one of my counties, I would crush the market.
Right.
If it went into full production. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't have the right to do it and that, but it also needs to be understood, I think, that if we went to a massive scale, you would probably see it come back into $600 for cotton, $400 for corn, or $300 for soybeans, and where you look into it.
I agree. I agree that the market is going to flatten out. No doubt about it. It's going to go down. The reason it's so expensive right now is because there were no genetics. There were no farmers that were growing hemp until very recently. It took a while for farmers to understand that it was okay to grow hemp, to take the leap and to learn how to grow hemp. The techniques, the agronomy is getting better and better every single day, and the more people that farm, you're absolutely right, as a commodity, the price is going to go down. It's not going to be something where everybody's going to get rich overnight. Absolutely not. Right. And crops fail. We know that. Yeah. There could be a hurricane. There could be blight. There could be lots of reasons for a crop to fail. The 2018 Farm Bill now provides for crop insurance for the first time. That's another reason people are now starting to cultivate hemp. But I will tell you this, there really is not a basis for crop insurance for hemp yet, for the simple reason that there hasn't been enough for the insurance companies to really evaluate the cost. So, yes, I agree with you completely.
Well, appreciate you coming all the way from Lexington, Kentucky to help educate us.
Thank you. No, it's my pleasure. If you have any other questions, let me know. The last thing I want to mention about transportation, because this is a huge deal. If you give me 1 minute, do you mind if I address transportation?
1 minute, because we've got a whole bunch.
So the way that it works is you have to have a transportation manifest saying that where it came from is from a licensed grower, where it's going is a licensed processor. You have to have copies of the licenses, you have to have copies of the certificates of analysis, and you have to have a manifest that shows what it is. Under this bill, it goes a step farther, that you have to have a QR code saying exactly what it is you're transporting, and it's linked to a site where law enforcement or the TDA or anyone else can on site immediately look and see who it is, where it came from, what it is, and where it's going. That is very, very important, and if there's anything that I would stress is transparency, openness from seed to sale, testing all the way along the line, make sure the rules are followed, and you will have a very, very successful industry here in Texas. So Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Jeff. Chair calls Stephen Thompson.
Hello. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Stephen Thompson from Argyle, Texas, just outside of Dallas, and I am in support of Bill 1325. I am here representing Zalise, the company that I'm the founder and CEO of. Also, I serve as the Executive Vice President of the United States Hemp Roundtable as well. I support this bill for 3 primary reasons. Number one, this year my company fully expects to sell north of $100 million of hemp-derived CBD products here in Texas. Yet over 100 of the jobs that we provide have to be out of state because we are not able to process here in the state. In addition to that, from a farming perspective, it is crazy for us to market this much product from hemp that is grown in Kentucky and Colorado when we could be doing it right here in Texas. And finally, traceability. What is so awesome about this bill, the QR code that we first instituted in Indiana, it basically gets rid of the bad actors, and it allows reputable companies that are legitimate to be able to come to the forefront, and it will eliminate, again, the individuals that are coming into this industry for maybe not the right reasons. So thank you.
All right, members, any questions? All right.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it very much. Next, Chair calls Bob Avant. And Bob, I apologize if I gave it my best shot, though, I promise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If you'll pull that mic down a little bit. Jeff was pretty tall back there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was close enough. My name is Bob Avant. I'm here on behalf of myself and Texas Texas Farm Bureau in support of House Bill 1325. I am president of Williamson County Farm Bureau and have a production, agriculture, and agricultural engineering background. Texas Farm Bureau supports the research, license, cultivation, production, processing, commercialization, utilization of hemp in Texas. We've watched from the sidelines as the 42 other states have started up their programs, and so we certainly don't want to be left behind. The legislation from the last session was to allow Texas to do the same, but of course it didn't pass. So now is the time, we think, to move forward and allow Texas producers to be able to produce hemp. The 2018 Farm Bill that was just passed in December sets the stage, I think, well to do that. And so we certainly see these products that you've heard talked about this afternoon being marketed in Texas, and so Texas farmers feel like that it's very appropriate that we get the opportunity to compete in that very lucrative market. The TDA will be an important part of that. Our eyes are wide open in terms of the regulatory implications of raising hemp, and we're going to have to do a great job. And of course, TDA will implement regulations to make sure that happens. Of course, we're very supportive of that and clearly understand the highly regulated nature of that crop. And we think that it's really important that we can grow it economically here in Texas. We think that there can be a promising future in Texas. We don't have much experience with it now. There's a lot of experience out there from other states like Colorado, Kentucky, Tennessee that we can learn from, and I think we can learn quite quickly. Texas agriculture, as has been pointed out, is and can be a leader in the production of virtually any commodity, and so we think that now's the time for Texas producers to be in play here and in the market. I agree with comments that have been made previously to you about the agronomics and many of the other aspects. I won't repeat them here. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to testify before the committee, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Committee members, any questions? Well, Bob, appreciate your input from Farm Bureau's standpoint, and I think as we've all said, anytime we can have an additional crop to rotate in that may show to be potentially more promising, from a financial standpoint,
You bet.
That's a good option for us to have. So thank you. Appreciate it. Chair calls William Watley.
Good afternoon, committee. I'm a Texas vet. This is the first time I'm speaking in front of the committee, so bear with me on this.
No problem. Just give your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill to get started with.
My name is Will Watley. I'm representing myself. And I want to thank the chairperson.
And your position on the bill?
I'm in favor of the bill.
All right, thank you. Good deal. No problem.
Thank you, Chairperson, committee members, representatives, and interested citizens for letting me speak about HB 1325. I'm representing Texas veterans and the tech community, making the committee aware of the tech advances dealing with compliancy issues with state audits and laws and banking in the hemp industry. I've worked with Oklahoma farmers, representatives, dispensaries, and also FDIC Bank in Colorado to solve these issues with the hemp market with technology. Here are some of the problems that we faced. First, like some other people have talked about, ensuring that we're below the 0.3 THC levels. 2, ensuring that hemp's being sold by Texas farmers. 3, who is buying and selling within the state? And 4, how do we keep this market transparent and legal? Here are the solutions that we came up with. There is a platform that's private, vetted, highly secure, farmer-to-buyer e-commerce site. The site uses GPS technologies to ensure that every transaction is happening within the state of Texas and keeping out those foreign entities. 2, each transaction on the site is automatically invoiced with a GPS location, with the buyer's license, seller's information, and most importantly, the product's information and lab results. 3, the invoice will be emailed to all parties involved, including any state audits. This will keep transparency in the market, so the government can know exactly what's going on in the market minute by minute. 4, there are seed-to-sell systems that tracks the seed from the time it's planted to the time it's sold for full transparency, for 2 reasons: for tax dollars, second reason for any type of plant recall. I would like to open it up for any questions.
All right. Committee, any questions? All right. We appreciate it, William. Thank you for coming down. Chair calls Sean Hauser.
Thank you. My name is Sean Hauser. I'm an attorney and a representative of the American Hemp Campaign. I specialize in hemp law. I'm a partner and chair of the hemp practice group at Vicente Cedarburg, and much of my practice is...
And your position on the bill?
I'm testifying in support of the bill.
No problem, Sean. Go ahead.
And much of my work is working with businesses and state governments and federal agencies and implementing laws to regulate hemp as an agricultural commodity. I've been working in the cannabis space for about 10 years, and excited to be... I live in Colorado, but excited to be back in Austin, where I'm from, and I've been kind of waiting for the opportunity for Texas to take up this issue. My goal here today is to kind of explain simply what I think a lot of folks get confused on the legal side, and to clarify a bit about the timeline. I won't repeat what a lot of folks said, but agree with many of the statements just about how Texas is really uniquely positioned to be a leader in the U.S. hemp economy. And wanted to clarify that hemp is now federally regulated as an agricultural crop under the purview of USDA in coordination with state departments of agriculture. The USDA is in the process of finalizing its regulations that will hopefully be out this fall and in time for a full implementation of the program for a 2020 growing season, which makes the timing with this bill very appropriate. And while many states are already growing now under the 2014 research program, we hopefully can start growing under the 2020 Farm Bill. States do have the option to act as primary regulatory authority by submitting state plans, which this bill directs Texas to do. That would allow it to have a plan to regulate hemp that's uniquely tailored to Texas and its environment instead of falling under federal authority. If Texas doesn't pass a bill, submit a state plan, or otherwise prohibit hemp, what would happen is we would fall under the federal regulation of hemp, and that could take some time, but hopefully would happen in 2020. That would be more standard regulation as opposed to a plan that would be tailored to Texas. And the USDA is looking at regulations that are specifically needed for areas of federal uniformity, like transportation, like testing, to ensure the commodity is properly regulated from seed to sale. And what's great about this bill is it does what other states do and ensure there's regulation on the state level for testing, for production to ensure quality and safe products and an operable program. I think this is really one of the biggest cash crops we might see in our lifetime. As Minnie said, it's an enormous economic opportunity, a multi-billion-dollar industry. The big names are in the space. CVS and Walgreens are selling the products. We've got Porsche making auto parts out of hemp, Levi's with hemp jeans. The industry is here in its fully federally legal form. One area of confusion that I wanted to address is the regulation of consumable products. Any products that are consumed by animals or humans are governed by FDA under the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, which applies to many CBD products now, but one issue is that the FDA has limited resources. They haven't really enforced in this area much outside of unlawful medical claims. And right now, this is totally unregulated at the state level, as many folks have identified. This is obviously a public safety issue, and one thing this bill does that I'm really supportive of is ensure proper regulation of consumables through the CREAR codes, through directing the health department with an MOU to ensure these products are properly labeled, properly marketed, so that consumers know that what they're getting is grown by Texas farmers or a lawful farmer from out of state, regulated by safe state agencies, tested to make sure it not only has what it purports to have, but doesn't have contaminants, and we can allow enforcement to differentiate bad actors from good actors. Other states who have hemp programs, most of them do regulate consumables on the state level. Where FDA has limited resources, it's incumbent on the state to come in, and I think this bill does a great job of addressing those issues. And happy to answer any questions on the federal timeline. The FDA is in the process of addressing ways to clarify and further regulate consumable hemp-derived cannabinoid products, and not only to clarify that the basic tenets of FDA apply, that you have to produce them in a food-grade facility, and they have to be labeled appropriately and packaged appropriately, but making sure that there's clear and unambiguous regulation around these products. There's an agency working group looking at these issues now, and we're expecting more guidance and clarity on this shortly. Right now, as you know, many products sold in Texas are not compliant with even these existing law as applies.
All right.
And sorry, just one more thing. I think I'm supportive of this bill because not only does it require hemp products sold in Texas to be regulated by the state to ensure compliance with law and safety, it ensures Texas has primary authority over hemp farming in Texas as appropriate for the state and doesn't defer to federal authority. It updates our laws to conform with the change in the Controlled Substances Act, and I really think the bill does a good job of taking the best approaches in other states and what worked and what was effective and the federal guidelines and coming up with a bill that was really great for Texas and establishing a hemp economy here. And Mr. Hardcastle took my joke, but as a Longhorn, the fact that we're behind Oklahoma is the reason I flew down here from Colorado. So,
well, thank you very much. Members, any questions? Representative Fiera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there not a timeliness issue? If we don't pass this bill this session, could we be at the beckoning of the feds?
Yes, so if we don't pass a bill this session and don't otherwise ban hemp production, we would fall under the federal plan, which would be probably released at the end of the year. And that means Texas farmers would be able to grow hemp under federal regulation, but Texas would not have primary regulatory authority.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And let the record reflect that Representative Zwiener is here. Chair calls Skip Leakey.
Mr. Chairman, members, my name is Skip Leak. I'm General Counsel for Prime My Body. Prime My Body and its 55,000 affiliates are in favor of this bill. Prime My Body really wants the opportunity for Texas to grow and process hemp. We currently market hemp oil in the state of Texas as well as all 49 other states and soon to be 7 other countries. And currently we can't manufacture our product in Texas. We can't package and ship our product in Texas, although our company actually operates in Texas. So this bill would enable our company to basically move all of its operations and employees and processing and all of our facilities back to Texas. The last thing I want to state in this regard is that I agree with everything else that everyone else has stated in front of me. But I also have brought together today a sample of our product, and I'd like everybody to see that our company voluntarily currently complies with all the Food and Drug Administration rules and regulations regarding a dietary supplement. We also fully comply with all of the Texas Department of State Health Services rules and regulations on a voluntary basis. But we would like the opportunity to comply with it on a 100% regulatory legal basis. As General Counsel of my company, my job is preventative maintenance. And without this framework in place, we are basically at a huge loss in fully complying with what we need to comply with to guarantee and deliver a safe product to our consumers. That's it.
All right.
Any questions?
Fantastic. Representative Buckley.
Yes, sir. Mr. Leak, could you just describe how a lack of clear statutory structure in Texas is impacting business in Texas and what the impact may be?
Yes.
Should we get some better defined statute?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
In regard to our company, the Texas Department of State Health Services inspected our food manufacturing. We have a food manufacturing license for our product, and we also have a food warehouse license for our product because we deem it to be an edible, consumable food product. And when they came to review our warehouse on their annual inspections, they had no choice but to basically declare our product to be adulterated and asked us to remove it from the state of Texas. And as a result of that lack of framework, they had no legal basis for which to allow us to continue to manufacture and warehouse and sell our product out of Texas. So basically, we entered into an informal arrangement and we packed our whole warehouse up and all of our employees and moved them to Oklahoma. And so what I would like is the opportunity to bring them all back. It's a lot easier and a lot cheaper on us as a company to do that, but that's what's happened. So without that direction, they had no choice but to presume us not lawful in Texas.
All right. Members, any other questions? All right, Skip, appreciate it.
One other point is I'd like everybody to look at our bottle. We do have the QR code with all the requirements already met and everything on there. If anybody would like to look at it, I just want to pass it around.
All right, thank you. We will do that. Chair calls Eric Herm. And if you've heard somebody say what you were going to do, a ditto does definitely work. But I know a lot of folks have traveled a long way to here, and so please share your unique stories as well, or points on the bill.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Eric Herm. I'm a fourth-generation Texas farmer, and I am in favor of Bill number 1325. I'm here representing myself and many other farmers on the southern plains of the Panhandle. The reason I'm excited about hemp is that this is a crop that we can grow that's something else in the summertime other than cotton that is beneficial to the soil and can make us money in the process. Cotton's about the only thing we've had for years in our part of the world and to make money in the summer times. And as a result, we've been deplenishing the soil for decades now. I farm wheat, I farm barley. Those things are great for adding organic matter. Those are grown in the wintertime and the spring. But we don't have anything in the summertime that's going to protect the soil. And most cotton fields, you're going to find out there have about 0.7, 0.8% organic matter in them. And any soil scientist is going to tell you need about 2.5 to have healthy soil. And a nation is only as strong as its soil. And so if you break that down state by state, Texas, we need to strengthen our soil. We need to strengthen our agricultural economy. And if you were to give me one plant moving forward, one seed to do that with, hemp would be the one. It's the only one I know of that can provide not only food, clothing, shelter. It cuts down on water substantially, much less than alfalfa and corn. It's comparable to cotton, but it also provides a canopy since it's drilled on 8-inch row pattern as opposed to 40 inches on cotton, where you got a lot of bare earth out there even during the growing season till the plant matures. And you get that canopy up there, and you're able to hold a lot of that rainfall into the soil, and it stays damp for longer periods of time. And we have to evolve, we have to grow and change, and I know this has been taboo for a long time, but through education and awareness, we now know what hemp is and what it is not, as many of the people who've testified before me today. And I'm a steward of the land, I'm a steward of the earth, and that's my job to take care of it as a farmer. And I feel that the hemp plant seed will allow me to do a better job of that where we live. And where I live, it's on the verge of, on the edge where the desert gave birth to the prairie. And to live and farm there, you kind of need to be tough, dumb, or crazy, but it sure helps if you're all three. So I got that going for me. And but you guys would help me and a lot of other farmers help keep what's left of our sanity if we had another crop like hemp to grow. Thank you.
All right. Yes, Representative Fierro.
Now, your farm, how close is it to West Texas?
I came to his office earlier, and I told him I was from West Texas, and somebody from El Paso. You can't beat them on farther west, so yeah.
That is correct. Well,
Yeah.
And then I'm sure Speaker Craddock will be happy to know that one of his constituents made that long travel
Absolutely.
as well. So, all right. Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank y'all.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Representative Meza. Didn't see you.
So you talked about, thank you, Chairman. You talked about using hemp as a rotation crop. Would there be any danger that hemp would be so lucrative that people would stop planting cotton, stop planting corn, stop planting all our other great crops and just want to plant hemp?
Well, I don't think anybody should go in there and just plant it row to row because, the key to being successful, I think, in agriculture long term is being diverse. And this gives us something else that we can add to the crops that we already grow. I think you're still going to have guys that are always going to farm cotton to some degree. You're going to have corn, you're going to have soy, you're going to have wheat, you're going to have these other crops. But I was telling people earlier today, Highway 87 just north of Big Spring was shut down for half a day 2 weeks ago because of a sandstorm. And that's because we've been farming cotton for so long. And we're not doing a good enough job of rotating other crops in. And in my part of the world, we just don't have anything else that'll grow well and that makes us any money. I'm farming wheat and barley, but I'm not making money on my conventional acres. I'm certified organic. I'm making money on those acres. But I'm trying to be more innovative and do things and sell directly to restaurants, to breweries, whatever it takes. Most farmers in my area are not making money. They're farming cotton. They're losing money. And the only way they've stayed afloat is by having oil mineral rights, making money that way, or selling water to the oil companies in our part of the world. And it's sad to see because guys are kind of giving up.
So you don't think it would replace the other crops? It would just be a rotational?
I can't speak to say what everybody else would do. It depends on the financial aspect. But if they're going to make money off a crop and they're going to make more off of it, they're going to plant more of that specific crop, most likely.
All right. Thank you very much, Eric. Appreciate it. Chair calls Jason Vaughn. State your name, who you represent, position on the bill.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Jason Vaughn. I'm here representing myself and Texas Young Republicans. First, let me say this is a medical issue and not a fashion statement, for those that are wondering.
I know Dan Crenshaw was thinking you were stealing his stick.
Really appreciate you guys for this hearing. This is actually a priority bill for us. We have 4 priorities, and we've also supported about 100 bills, and this is the only one where I can say that we've had people actually call us and beg us to please get out there supporting this bill from both investors and farmers that are coming to us saying, please get out there. So this is something that is that there are a lot of passionate people about, a lot of people that want to get this done now. And some of the investors have actually said, they're trying to figure out, do we go on and go to Oklahoma for now and then come back to Texas? Because we all know ultimately they will come back to Texas. Everybody does. Or is this going to pass and we're going to get it done? And I have been telling them I believe in this committee, I believe in the House and the Senate. We're going to get that. I believe y'all will get this done this time. So really appreciate it. Only thing I'll add is that when you're looking at the regulations, I love that folks from Kentucky are coming in and are going to be doing a lot of the processing, and folks from other states are going to come in. Let's just make sure our regulations are such that native Texans that are just getting into this industry are able to get into it as well. We know that regulations have got to be in place, but want to make sure that they're appropriate and that so that the small farmer, the small businessman can get in there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. Chair calls Stephen Hall. All right, we'll give him a... Stephen, if you're in the overflow room and coming back, we will work you in. Otherwise, we'll show you for the bill. Steve Lyles. Hi, if you'll state your name.
Hello, sir. My name is Steve Lyles. I'm a local resident. I'm from California, but I live here now in
Okay,
Austin.
and who do you represent today?
I represent myself, sir.
Fantastic. And position on the bill?
My position on the bill is I am in favor of it. However, I'm concerned. I thought the bill was really about helping. The gentleman earlier expressed that there's 3 different types of where the seeds can be used. One of them is textile, and the textile really deals with the fiber, the branch of the stalk of it. As far as I know, a lot of times those seeds will end up being up to 3% THC in this, but the stalk itself isn't having the THC that the leaves do. So the problem is when it gets regulated, those crops might get cut down because they go over the required limit, even though in the end it makes a hat, it makes a tie, it makes rope, it makes flags. And so that's my concern, is that those farmers might start their crop and then have their crops cut down, but the CBD guys will be fine. If you're making oils out of it, that can stay under the 0.3. It's just the fiber, the textile industry might be affected by that. So I would like to know if you can maybe consider making an exemption to that, like per crop. If it's going to be used for textile, it might need to be taken a look at depending on the seed type. But that's my concern, is that we're going to run into that point when these guys are making clothing. Can't be smoked, can't be used to consume, but they're going to lose their crops because it goes over the 0.3%.
Right. Okay. I understand your point, and I know in visiting with some folks early on, that we were talking about seeds and making sure that certain seeds are really genetically designed not to have really zero THC. That would also be for the fiber as well as the oils. And so it is one of those that, those farmers or ranchers that are going to be moving into that crop will have to pay attention and know what they're doing. Or they will risk losing that crop.
Yes, and in the end, that's my concern. So the long stalk is a different seed. Back in the 40s, 30s, that's what they used to grow. The military used to make all rope out of that, as well as paint, and so, not paint, but really the rope. So the rope fiber is what I'm concerned with. That's a very long stalk, so they can kind of latch on like that. The shorter CBD things can be used for oils and that stuff, and the seed stock. But if you can just make a note of that, that's going to be a concern for farmers who really want to work on textiles, and that's a huge market for us. I think that we could take away the Canadian market. China right now is killing us in that market. We should take all that back and make that here, and those require certain machines to make, which right now they would have to send it off-site, but if we make it easier for farmers to have those machines here, then we can completely cap that market and capture that market once again.
All right. Well, I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Members, any questions? Thank you, Steve. Chair calls Mark McBath.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm Mark McBath. I'm here representing myself
and my patients, my cancer patients. I'm a cancer surgeon from Houston, Texas, and wanted to come and address the multiple uses that CBD oil and products like that would have in use and treatment for patients of mine.
And your position on the bill?
My position on the bill is very much in favor of.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't want to drag it out in the proceedings any further or restate everything that's been stated already. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer.
Well, this body has shown a strong desire for that patient's right to try with their doctor and figuring out what works for them. And so in that regard, I think it's very appropriate.
Very good, sir.
Any questions? All right. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Appreciate your patience. Hayden, Chair calls Hayden Shibley. And Hayden, I apologize if I missed that one.
You got it.
Oh, wow. That's that blind squirrel comment.
Hi there, Hayden Shibley. I'm here representing myself and the Circle B Ranch, and I'm very much in favor of the bill. I won't take up much time either. I think a lot of what I came here to say has been said already. We are ranch owners in Childress, Texas, and I just recently, along with my younger brothers, inherited our ranch land from my grandfather, and we'd very much like to keep that land. And right now we see golden opportunity to keep that land and preserve the generations of farming that have been in our family for now. I guess I'd be the fourth generation here as native Texans. And also being in Childress, we're just shy of the Red River, and so looking north, we see a lot of prosperity across that line, and we don't want to have to move up north or leave anywhere outside of the county to continue doing what we're doing. And I do believe there's a large majority of other millennials or people in my age group that are inheriting properties from their parents or grandparents that are in a similar standpoint where they're either it's up for an easy sale, or there's one clear-cut path forward along with the other rotational crops to make sure that we're prosperous and we can keep that in the family.
Where's your ranch in Childress?
It's just right. The town's changed so much in the last year now, but we're right off turn where that Sonic is.
Mm-hmm.
Take a left right there, go about 2 miles, and you can't miss us.
It's my district. I know where that Sonic is.
Yep. Right in between Sonic and Walmart. So. All
right. Head south down there on 84 a little bit?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, good. Or 83, actually. But, well, good. I appreciate it. A lot of us represent landowners, especially those like Chairman King and myself. We have a lot of folks that are in urban areas, but they have ranches come out and work those and make sure that land's productive. So it's good to give you options. Committee, any questions? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Chair calls Aaron Robinson.
Good afternoon, Chairman. My name is Erin Robinson. I'm in favor of the bill, representing myself. I own a nursery in East Texas. It's in Quitman, and population is about 1,800 people. We are working with other farmers that are trying to find a sustainable crop. I studied at Cal Poly University in California for sustainable agriculture, so environment is very important to me. My husband worked at this nursery before he enlisted for the Air Force. It used to be ornamental flowers. As you know, it uses a lot of harmful herbicides and pesticides, so keeping it organic is very important to me. I think hemp has a huge opportunity for Texas. There's plenty of farmers that have plenty of land. We're a nursery, so we could provide a facility to keep those genetics that are going to be good growing in different climates that Texas offers. There's about 4 different growing zones that industrial farmers are going to be looking at. So we really want to be involved with, I know we have a Go Texan program, Farmer Veteran Coalition. There's plenty of resources out there to where when this bill does get passed, that we want to be an available resource for our fellow farmers, and also just really helping them know how to grow the product from seed to product or different strains. There's even ruderalis. There's so many different parts of hemp that will be available to any farmer in Texas. So in those packets, there's plenty of, great information of what hemp could do. It's, taking part of cotton. Everybody in here is probably wearing cotton. And in 10 years, we could see a lot more of us be wearing hemp and not being so expensive because China's the one that's producing it. They're the one that's making the product. So I believe that we could bring that into Texas. We can make a lot of farmers be successful, not losing their farms. We're two veterans that, by this, grace of God, that we have our property, and we're really wanting to turn it in the right direction and not, flowers are pretty, but it's not exactly good for the environment, so.
Representative Buckley.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you look at, let's say, the growing of hemp for fiber, from what, and I'm learning a lot today, but from what I understand, this would be the way to go with a much lower cost or barrier to entry. Is that right? Could the seeds would be different or a different type of plant? Is that correct?
Yes, different. Hemp has different strains, different, more for fiber, that is 10 times stronger than cotton. It's better for the soil. There's less water that is being wasted, that it could really benefit that industry. And then also it could grown in Texas will, definitely help, like a price point, help knowing that it's coming from here and not made in China.
Okay, thank you.
And also with the 0.3%, I know a farm in Kentucky and other states that grow hemp. I think what's really going to hurt our farmers is if they're told to burn their crop, to where there could be a certain license for fiber. So if I'm a farmer that has land, and heat stress is what makes THC percentage change. And so if you're about to harvest, you're finally, maybe have to pay a couple bills off as a farmer, and you get popped hot that you're going to be told to burn your crop, but there's also different industries that the food grade doesn't even pertain, and that's where the percentage really holds into. So I really think that should be kind of considered when these farmers are going to be wanting to grow it in southern Texas. It's really hot down there, and you don't want to set them up for failure. And also, having these licenses, and you're probably going to be paying a couple $1,000 a year just to hold this license to grow hemp. So we're really wanting to set our farmers up for success, and that should be kind of taken into consideration.
Members, any other questions? All right, Aaron, and appreciate your service in the Navy.
Oh, thank you.
Chair calls Rudolfo Montez.
That's correct, Chairman. How are you doing?
Oh my gosh, I got two names right. That's a shocker.
My name is Rudy Montez. Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. I represent myself, Phoenix Incorporated, and all my veterans that are out there. I am in favor and support the bill. Accessing genetics to grow hemp in Texas will be the biggest challenge for new hemp farmers. Please don't make it harder for us or put restrictions on farmers on the front end. Texas has the opportunity to become the gold standard in the state of hemp programs if implemented from lessons learned in other states such as Kentucky, Colorado, Oregon, Maine. Industry leaders understand that the term certified seed refers to the stability and maintenance of seeds genetics to ensure optimal cultivar performance. There are already some national certification processes enforced by the Association of Seed Certifying agencies in the cooperations with other organizations such as the International Seed of Testing Association and organizations for economic cooperations. There's no reason to recreate this wheel. Let Texas farmers grow the hemp. Collaborators with the farmers and seed organizations will be critical in ensuring the success of this agricultural commodity. National research in regards to the genetics, both seed and clones will provide economic growth for Texas. Regulations framework should be directed at the back end when the crops are harvested and tested, which is required under federal hemp laws already. Lawmakers should suggest and educate on why it is best farming practice to buy certified seed versus requiring and mandating during the application process. Over-regulation at the entry point is expensive and administratively burdensome and will create unnecessary barriers to entry for Texas farmers. I work with veterans who are excited to farm and find that work in the soil, and with other veterans have only has agriculture commodity value, but at the value for veterans' overall health and wellness. And as a veteran for myself of 20 years, and I still work for the State Department, I come back here, I find more veterans, just like Erin was another veteran who just came up here a little while ago and working with her, working with a lot of other ones that are in the back of the room, and I appreciate, all their support and your support as well. And what we like to do is being able to identify those farmers and be able to help them out by some of the programs that we already been, some of the lessons we already been learning from our other growers in other states and bringing it back here to Texas for Texans, kind of making America hemp again. Subject to your questions?
Yes, member. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Montez. Appreciate your service.
Appreciate it.
This time, the chair would like to call Sheila Hemphill. And Sheila, if you would give us your name and who you represent and where you position on the bill.
Thank you. My name is Sheila Hemphill, and I'm the Executive Director of the Texas Hemp Industry Association. And it's a pleasure to see all these people testifying, because in 2015, then Chairman King of the Ag Committee remembered it was the Hemphill Family and Friends Witness Program, because not many people knew much about hemp. So I would like to take a few minutes and kind of give a lesson so that we've all heard the same thing. The plant genus is cannabis. The species is Cannabis sativa L. Within that species, we have plant variety that, based upon the gene predisposition of the seed, will determine the concentrations of the cannabinoids. Cannabinoids are the family of all the molecules found within the cannabis plant. This includes tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, which is the only intoxicating molecule that has the capacity for psychoactive attributes once it's been heated. In the raw form of the plant, there are no intoxicating capacity. It has an acidic attribute to it. So once it becomes heated, it has decarboxylation where the acidic attribute falls off. So in this raw state, in these fields, even if we were to talk about a plant that tested over the 0.3 threshold, that product would not be an intoxicating crop. The other well-known cannabinoid is cannabidiol, CBD. There is cannabigerol, CBG, cannabinol, CBN. Depending on who you talk to, there's over 80 to 200 different cannabinoids within this cannabis plant. God created all mammals with an endocannabinoid system in that we produce a cannabinoid known as anandamide that's most prevalent in mother's breast milk. And the name anandamide means bliss. And if any mother has ever nursed a baby, that is what is on that face after they are full. It's total bliss. So that is a cannabinoid produced, as well as 2-AG. Now, crop is predominantly grown for let's just talk about three different varieties. We have fiber, which would be a plant that's going to be anywhere from 12 to 15 feet tall, because once you want off that are these bast fibers. These grow as long as the plant. This is the strongest fiber known. We have GSA contracts from the U.S. military because it's still the most desirable rope for the Navy. It doesn't deteriorate in salt water. That variety would be planted very close together and could be in your fields, Chairman Springer, of those hundreds of thousands of acres, more in a traditional crop environment where you would grow it and you would windrow it and bale it. To get those fibers off, your options are to use
Ms. Hemphill, are there any issues that in the bill that you think that are going to prevent the hemp industry from being able to go forward?
I have some concerns about what I'm calling the knee-jerk reaction. Hemp is another fiber crop and a grain crop. It is food. The packets that you had going around, that is the inner part of the seed that has been hulled. If that seed is then squeezed, you get this extraction, which is the fiber that can be ground into protein. So my concern is overregulation of a knee-jerk reaction. I'm all for food safety, of pesticides testing.
Well, I think we're going to call TD up here in a little bit and make sure that we're addressing it, and from a regulatory standpoint, we don't overreact to it, because I agree with you that we need that option, and it needs to be common sense. It makes sense.
And peanuts are known for fungus. And corn has to be checked for molds.
Now, is that hemp burgers?
Actually, this is a local Austin company that takes the hemp hearts, which is what you've got little samples of, that they bring in by semi-loads out of Canada. I have producer contracts
So
waiting.
is there any meat in that?
No,
says
sir, it's a
burger?
vegan.
Oh, God. Now
It's
we're
actually
back to,
good.
God, you were doing great until now. Now we're back to nut juice
Oh,
again.
but you know what? If we can,
No, I'm sorry, almond milk.
if this is cow cake, this is remind you of cow cake, doesn't it? Right? Here's the deal: if we can get here produced more often, when we feed this to our livestock, because it has CBD predominance in it, it is anti-inflammatory, and inflammation. Mr. Veterinarian Anderson is a big problem, and especially in the dairy industry, right? With inflammation.
I think Representative Buckley might be.
Mr.
offended
Buckley?
that he didn't get asked that same
I'm
question.
sorry. So, one thing about the seed predisposition of the plant, if the THC is high of that plant, the CBD is usually low, and that would be your marijuana variety. If the THC is low, the CBD is high. Now, the flowering part that the gentleman was talking about, most of what's talked about here so far has been CBD production. So, let's see, I got to fiber planted close together with traditional seed drills in with fertilization typical to wheat fields. Now, there are no certified pesticides or herbicides for the use of hemp. So what we have coming out of Canada in semi-loads to provide for this Austin provider don't have any pesticides or herbicides because they're not approved. This is materials that comes from the
I
fiber.
wonder why they say burgers instead of patties.
You know, I don't know how they can do that. It
Did we
sounds
not-
like an
I
FDA
think I have an
problem of
amendment to one of my other bills.
misrepresentation.
Anyway, we'll stay with this one.
These are fibers that you can be pressed and used in the aerospace industry and the auto industry for doors and panels because it's lighter
And I think
stronger.
we've seen all the, I think there's going to be 1,000 different other things as we continue to go forward. But if you've got, in respect for time, any other questions or issues on the bill?
Yes, sir. The expediency of this bill, because if we could get this to the floor as quickly as possible, we have historical documents of hemp growing in 60 to 90 days versus the 120 days coming out of Canada. So theoretically, if all this happened promptly of getting out of committee, getting to calendars, getting to the floor, getting over to the Senate, and getting unanimous, I could go for unanimous out of the House and the Senate because it's happened in other states, and I think it's a good deal for Texas. I would caution of getting this done because of the ambiguity in the law. For 5 years, I've been the call that people call when they have problems with law enforcement over the ambiguity of the law. People, innocent people, have suffered because of this ambiguity. We've had the privilege to walk through some of those with DPS as well as various different DAs and also with DSHS about giving clarity on the food and safety. So expediency is what I would leave you with.
Good deal.
Hey,
All
thank
right,
you.
thank you very much. I appreciate that. And the chair calls
Any questions?
Brady Mills. I did not see the lights lit. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. My name is Brady Mills. I'm the Crime Lab Director for the Texas Department of Public Safety, and I am on the bill as a resource if
Yes, sir.
anybody has any questions.
as drafted, do you see any issues or problems that we haven't thought of that we need to take into consideration to make sure that, one, you have, the proper law enforcement has the proper oversight, but yet it's written in a way that you can actually make sure it works?
So I believe there's an individual from our CID, which is our Criminal Investigative Division here as well, that can talk about the oversight and the enforcement piece. I can speak to the Crime Lab portion. From the Crime Lab portion, the only thing that we see in the bill is that we do not currently quantitate THC in samples, and so we would have to go through a validation process and procure some instrumentation to be able to do that quantitation. Much like the things that were brought up by some of the other experts in the room, we would move to an LCMS type version.
All right. Members, any questions? All right.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you very
Chairman.
much, Brad. Let's see who we've missed here. Chair calls Coleman Hemphill. This thing's freezing up. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. My name is Coleman Hempill, president of the Texas Hemp Industries Association and chief executive officer of Texagon LLC. I recently had to move to Oregon in July of this last year.
And your position on the bill?
Is in favor of the bill. Just to address a few of the questions that came up, in Oregon, they plant their crop finishing at the beginning of July. From June 28th to November 18th, there wasn't a drop of rain in the county that I was in. As was testified here earlier, minimal irrigation starting out with that crop is really all that's necessary. And it really tends to highest production levels of CBD and desirable attributes in these dry areas. Like grapes, like other vegetable crops, the stress that comes with the lack of rain and being able to control that is very advantageous and is something that would be very good in the state of Texas. All of the farmers in Oregon are licensed through their Department of Agriculture. They have harvest lot identifiers that identify all the different varieties that come out of that crop. Their crops have to be tested prior to harvest. And in regard to ingestible products, was a question earlier, there are batch lots, so you have to test the raw materials every so many pounds. I agree that we should have certification within the state, but as this gentleman testified earlier, there aren't many certified varieties already. So as long as there's a certificate of analysis that's shown at least 2 years of consistent levels below that 0.3 threshold, we should be allowed to do it. Another statement that was made earlier about THC levels being high in the fiber is completely not true. Your cannabinoid productions could be in the flowering plant. Generally, in your feminized crops, your fiber varieties are harvested prior to going to that level. In regard to safety, the FDA, where they have done studies on CBD at 100% CBD levels, both in an oil form or an isolated powder form, they have that registered as a Schedule 5 drug, similar to Robitussin and other over-the-counter products. So there's a very low level of concern. As long as there aren't heavy metals, as long as you don't have pesticides or herbicides, which will all be picked up in the high-pressure liquid chromatography testing. I think it's important that you have high-frequency testing. Let's get direct best farming practices for the producers and also give that chain of custody through. The association's totally focused on good agricultural practices, which are prerequisites for almost all your other crops. If you're growing basil, you're growing lettuce, and you want to sell in HEB, you have to go through that audit process to be allowed to be a vendor. We don't want to be treated any differently, and we don't want to be treated any less. This is going to be a great crop for farmers, and I thank the chairman. I know I've chased a bunch of y'all down the halls for the last 5 years. I'm so excited to see where this has come, and I'm hoping to see this out soon. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Members, we have, I believe, potentially a resource witnesses from Dishes on Consumables. If anybody wants to call them up, we'll need to get them to register. If not, I'm going to call Dan Hunter from TDA up. But if somebody wants somebody from Dishes, please let me know, and we'll get them registered and have them come up.
Mr. Chairman, Dan Hunter, Assistant Commissioner, Texas Department of Agriculture, on the bill.
All right. Members, any questions? Okay, Dan. In looking through there, your thoughts from a TDA perspective of being able to provide oversight and regulations?
Yes, sir. Essentially, one of the things, and I think there's probably some clarification needs to take place with regards to what needs to happen, and Chairman King's bill takes care of all the things that need to be happening so that we can grow hemp here in the state of Texas. The feds have laid out the guidelines pretty simply for us, and if we'll follow those, you'll be able to, many of the things that have been talked about today, whether it's with regards to testing, rehabilitation, growing, all the different varieties will be taken care of with regards to the guidelines we're given from the feds, even from the consumables. FDA is going to give regulations we've already heard. So essentially, three things need to happen for us to be able to grow hemp in the state of Texas, and they're very simple. Number one, this body here needs to decriminalize the product as far as in the penal code. Mr. Paul, I know, who's here from the Department of State Health Services, of course, they took it off the Schedule 1 list, which allows for the sale of hemp products here in the state of Texas. They just recently have done that. However, For it to be grown here in the state of Texas, you have to decriminalize it from the penal code. There was a misnomer made earlier with regards to that if we don't do anything, the feds are going to take this over and we'll have a federal. That is not the case. We still have to have action by this body in order to be able to grow product here in the state of Texas. The feds will not take over this program.
That's what my understanding was, so I appreciate you clarifying that.
They will give us guidelines. So secondly, the second thing, you need to give us the authority to apply for a plan. We submit a plan to USDA. They look and say, okay, you are going to be able to implement this plan and draw up regulations. They are going to issue regulations. So even if you passed it today, tomorrow, the next day, nothing can happen under the 2018 Farm Bill. There's no product, even the product that's being grown in other states right now, are still being grown under the 2014 Farm Bill, which is a pilot and research project. USDA has already announced that they're going to promulgate rules, and they've said very plainly, if you don't follow our rules, we're not going to approve your plan. So I guess what I'm saying is that as we apply for the plan, we'll promulgate rules, give us the latitude to make sure that we can apply rules and promulgate rules that are within the structure of whatever USDA gives us. So as we look at whether it's testing issues, whether it's rehabilitation issues, whether it's transportation issues, we're going to receive guidance from USDA. We have spent a great deal of time speaking with the Secretary's office, the Undersecretary's office. They want consistency across the board. So whether you're growing it in Oklahoma, whether you're growing it in Texas, whether you're growing it in Kentucky, whether you're growing it in Oregon, they want everybody essentially applying by the same rules. And they've already said, if your rules are different than ours, we will not approve your plan. Which the only thing that happens in is we will not be growing this product in the state of Texas. That does not say it won't be sold in the state of Texas. It's just that our producers here in the state of Texas won't be able to grow it.
Right. All right. And on cost recovery,
yes,
you know, you would be able to figure out what the agency thinks it needs to regulate, do those oversights, put those in to be able to figure out what the fee structure would be.
We do, and I think we'll get a good indication with regards to the, you know, the cost recovery part of it's going to be tied to acres and also number of permits. And once again, we're going to be giving guidelines on what you're going to have to do with regards to whether it's GPS tracking, with regards to regulatory issues, things like that. So that'll play into how much we're going to have to be involved as far as cost recovery items. Testing, once again, if they allow third-party testing, which is in the bill, then that's great. But we're going to be able to have guidelines that give us an idea, which will also help us as we calculate what those cost recovery costs will be.
Mm-hmm. Representative Buckley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarification for my sake, does this bill, or is this a USDA rule, does this bill contemplate a crop that would test higher than 0.3% being destroyed, or could that still be used for fiber? How does that work? In other words, let's say growing conditions pop the THC to a certain level.
Correct.
How does that work?
Well, a couple of different things I think that need to be taken into consideration, Dr. Buckley, as you take up the chairman's bill with regards to this. So the guidelines could come down from USDA that said if it tests once above 0.3, you have to destroy the crop. We don't have any control on it. Bottom line is I guess where we're going with this is we're not opposed to retesting. We're not opposed to rehabilitation. We want to be able to follow the guidelines. So I would encourage, and I think this is what Chairman King's bill has done, is trying to give enough latitude within the bill so that if there is a retest allowed, that you can do it. If they say that if it tests you above 0.3, you can rehabilitate. Those types of things are things that I think we'll receive federal guidelines from. However, if it says after a second test you have to destroy the crop, then that's what has to be done. I mean, consistency across the board is where we're going with this, I think. And I will say this, as we promulgate rules here in the state of Texas, we want to make sure that every farmer in the state of Texas has as good or better advantage than any farmer anywhere else. So if we can retest, great. If they allow that remediation, we'll be happy to do that. Okay, yeah. And we'll promulgate that in rules. Sure, and many of the things talked about here today are things that will be promulgated in rules.
Yeah. My fear would be significant investment by farmers that would then test at a level that would require destruction and possibly take them out of business before they ever get started.
And I think that's a great point. And I think as USDA publishes their rules for the upcoming crop, that is one of the things that every group that's here that has a concern with those types of things needs to make sure that they comment when the feds promulgate their rules.
All right.
Good point. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. Members, any other questions? Yep. Representative Mason.
Excuse me, my arm's not that long. Thank you, Chairman. Is this one of those situations where Texas would be allowed to be stricter than the federal rules in its plan, but not more lenient?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. We have a couple folks have called. I'm going to give them another chance if they had stepped out briefly. James Dickey. All right. And Stephen Hull. All right. Is there anybody else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 1325? Hearing none, the chair calls on Chairman King to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members, for paying attention. And through all of that testimony, you can hear that people are very passionate about it. I point out nobody dropped a card even against it. I do want to reiterate that our role in this bill is to simply put Texas in a position to receive the USDA federal authorization to grow hemp in the state of Texas. And I have confidence in the Texas Department of Agriculture that they're not going to adopt rules that are onerous on the growers, and that they'll be fair on their cost recovery. But we do have to give them that flexibility as those U.S. rules come along, that they can do that. If at some point down the road we decide that the Texas Department of Agriculture has adopted some rules that are too restrictive, more restrictive than USDA, and it makes it unworkable for some of the producers in the state of Texas, well, we can deal with that and pass legislation or do something. But we need to get a bill on the books. We need to get something passed so that we can be participating in this. Oh, we're going to end up being the only state in the union that's not growing hemp in some form or fashion. So with that, I close.
Well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate it. I think everybody did a fantastic job of describing what this is, which is industrial hemp. It's an option for farmers to be able to grow, that it has nothing to do with the hallucinogenic aspect that so many times I think is misrepresented and from that. So I appreciate your work over the years on this issue. The committee substitute for House Bill 1325 is withdrawn, and the bill is left pending before the committee.